He told the world he was flying out for a business conference. Then he quietly slipped back into his own mansion, like a burglar, ready to catch his nanny in the act. Graham Whitmore hated uncertainty. Since his wife Diane passed away, his life had turned into a grid, schedules, rules, and a silence so strict it felt like a law. He'd fired 4 nannies in 6 months, 1 for being 5 minutes late, 1 for checking her phone while feeding the twins, 1 simply because her laugh sounded too loud in a grieving house. Then came the new nanny Chloe, young, unpolished, and according to the trusted housekeeper, Mrs. Hargrove, the wrong kind of girl. That morning, Mrs. Hargrove leaned in and whispered, "Sir, the boys don't cry when you're gone. Babies always cry. If they're not crying, she's either drugging them or terrifying them." Those words lit a fuse in Graham's chest. So he staged a trip, carried a briefcase for show, and returned minutes later, locks already oiled the night before, no squeak, no warning. In his mind, he'd walk into chaos, neglect, proof. He stepped inside, held his breath and listened. He didn't hear crying. He didn't hear a TV. He heard something worse, something that felt like an insult to his grief. Laughter, deep, rhythmic, unstoppable laughter coming from the living room. His 1-year-old twins, Owen and Caleb, laughing like they hadn't laughed in a year. Graham's stomach tightened. Curiosity collided with panic. He moved down the hallway, every step saying the same thing. If they're happy without me, what does that make me? Graham didn't rush in. He stalked the sound like it was evidence. He'd oiled the locks himself the night before, quiet hands, careful work, like a man preparing a sting, not a homecoming. Now the front door swung inward without a squeak, and he stepped into the foyer with his briefcase hanging at his side like a prop in a bad play. On paper, he was supposed to be 30,000 feet in the air, headed to a conference. In reality, he was standing on his own marble tile, holding his breath, listening for the disaster Mrs. Hargrove had promised. "Babies always cry," her warning echoed in his head. "If they don't, something's wrong." The house looked perfect, too perfect. That museum clean silence he demanded after Diane died. Graham set the briefcase down gently, as if a loud thud might wake the grief he'd been sleeping beside for a year. He expected the twins wailing. He expected the TV blaring. He expected Chloe sprawled on the couch phone, glowing in her face, his boys ignored like background noise. Instead, the laughter hit him again, full-bodied, wild, the kind that makes your stomach ache from smiling. Owen, Caleb, his sons were laughing without him. Graham's jaw tightened so hard it hurt. His mind raced through worst-case scenarios anyway. What is she doing to make them laugh like that? He moved down the hallway on careful steps. The polished floor cold under his shoes, the sound growing louder with each stride. And with every step, another thought pressed in, sharp and humiliating. If Chloe can pull joy out of my children that easily, then what have I been doing wrong this whole time? Halfway down the hallway, Graham caught himself doing something he hadn't done in years. He slowed down, almost afraid to ruin whatever was happening. Mrs. Hargrove's voice kept clawing at him anyway. Too young, too loud, too vulgar. The woman had said it with that syrupy concern that always sounded like loyalty. And Graham, raw, widowed, and addicted to control, had swallowed it like medicine. He'd convinced himself this was a rescue mission, but the closer he got, the stranger it felt. The laughter wasn't forced. It wasn't nervous. It was the kind of laughter that comes from pure safety. He reached the living room threshold and stopped dead. The room, usually spotless beige and silent, looked like a tiny riot had happened. Toys scattered, sunlight flooding in. And there in the center of it all was Chloe, not sitting neatly with a picture book, not warming bottles. She was stretched out flat on the rug, grinning up at the ceiling like she didn't have a care in the world. On her hands, bright yellow rubber gloves, the kind you'd use to scrub a sink. "Up my brave boys," she cheered. Owen and Caleb, his 1-year-old twins, were standing on her. Literally standing on her chest and stomach, wobbling like tiny daredevils. Owen threw his arms up like he'd climbed a mountain. Caleb, his smaller twin, the one doctors worried about, was trembling but upright, laughing with his whole face. To anyone else, it would have looked like love. To Graham, filtered through grief and pride, it looked like chaos. Like disrespect, like danger. His stomach twisted. And in that instant, he didn't see two happy babies. He saw a stranger on his floor, turning his sons into a circus. Graham's face went hot. His pulse climbed into his throat. And the worst part, his sons weren't just laughing, they were laughing at full volume in the one room he'd kept like a shrine. "Chloe." His voice came out low and sharp, like a judge saying a sentence. The spell didn't break right away. Chloe made a ridiculous airplane sound, and Owen and Caleb exploded again. Those deep belly laughs that feel almost violent. Graham's hands curled into fists. In his head, he saw germs on those yellow gloves. He saw a fall, a cracked skull, an ambulance racing up his long driveway. He saw the headlines he'd never forgive himself for. "How dare you," he whispered, stepping forward. "How dare you turn my house into this?" Chloe finally noticed him. Her smile faltered for half a second, just long enough for the twins to feel the shift. Two tiny faces went from joy to alarm, like someone flipped a switch. Caleb turned his head too fast. His little legs wobbled. His balance vanished. He tipped right toward the hardwood. Careful, Graham lunged, but he was too far. Chloe wasn't. She moved like a reflex, not a worker on the clock. One yellow-gloved hand shot up and caught Caleb mid-air, cradling his head against her chest. Her other arm hooked Owen at the waist and pulled him in tight. In one smooth motion, she rolled up to sitting, both boys pressed safely to her body, breathing hard. The twins started crying, Sharp panicked, betrayed. Graham stormed in and snatched Owen away. "Let go of my children!" he barked, voice shaking with fury and fear. "What kind of madness is this?" Chloe stayed on the floor, hands empty, eyes wide, still trembling. And Graham, blinded by grief and control, couldn't see what she'd just proven. She hadn't risked his sons. She'd saved them. Graham's eyes flicked to Owen on the couch, small fists punching the cushion, face wet and red. Then to Caleb, arching in his arms like he was trying to escape a stranger. And that's exactly what it felt like. "Go!" Graham hissed, voice clipped and final.